Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 142, re-record edition. Why? Because the first video didn't have any audio. And I actually did figure out why. The reason why is because I played a little bit of video game earlier, and this particular controller has a, let's see if I can get it, yeah, has a little input right there for a mic, and the computer decided that it would switch the default microphone to the non-existent microphone on this controller and then just keep it there, even though the controller wasn't turned on and wasn't connected anymore. So, the more you know, the more you grow. Today's video is on an article from The Atlantic, the birth, let me tidy myself, alright. The 9.9% is the new American aristocracy. The class divide is already toxic. Everything is toxic. And fast becoming unbridgeable. You're probably part of the problem. Blame. Toxic blame. All right. And this is referring to the top 9.9%, like from the 90th percentile to the 99.9th percentile. So it is leaving out the billionaires in the top 0.1% and then basically blaming the lawyers and doctors and all the other people for America's problems. And it reminded me of an article I had seen before, or a series of articles I had seen before, that referred to the hoarding of the American dream. There was a guy who wrote a book about people who were hoarding, dream hoarders. They were hoarding the American dream for themselves, and then to promote his book, he wrote this series of articles in the Atlantic and other places that discussed concepts that were in the book. And I want to go deeper into this article, but unfortunately it's a really long article, and so I didn't have time last night to get that far in it, and in fact I have not read it in great detail. I've probably read about half of it, or a third of it, maybe, in not so much detail. So I am going to read this in detail today, but to start off, I just wanted to do some math to better understand what is going on with the top 9.9%. So, in the article it says, as of 2016, it took 1.2 million in net worth to make it into the 9.9%. 2.4 million to reach the group's median, and 10 million to get into the top 0.9%. So, like any good nerd, I was like, all right, let's test this. So I went to a net worth quantile calculator via Google, and I put in 1.2 million here, and I saw that indeed it did pop out 90%. But what you should notice is a $1.2 million net worth was percentile 90% in 2016. This wealth percentile contains around 629,000 U.S. households and ranged from 1.182 million to 1.253 million. Oh, 629,000 U.S. households. Households are not individuals. Households are buildings where individuals live. And so some households contain one person, but many, many, many households contain a married couple, which is two people. And that is not a single person's net worth. Oftentimes, articles do not make any distinction between a household and individual net worth, despite the fact that it's one person earning versus two people earning. And there are, significantly different tax implications for working married couples and singles. Anyhow, let's look at what it takes to get into the top 9.9%. How long does it take to get $1.2 million? And how much do you have to save? All right, so what I did is I started with gross incomes, $20,000, $40,000, $60,000, $80,000, all the way up to $140,000. And then I said, what's your paycheck? So how much are you actually taking home? 677, 1300, 1820, etc. And then, of course, I multiply the paycheck by 2 because that is what you are making in a month. And so that would be this. But then I go back and I say, let's just save half of your paycheck. Let's live on one paycheck. So no matter what your overall earnings is, let's just live on half that paycheck. So let's save this first amount every single month. Now, obviously, if you, like, for example, if you made, say, $120,000, but you only saved, $2,000 a month, then you're on the same schedule as the guy making $60,000 in terms of accumulating $1.2 million. Obviously, your savings rate's not 50% at that point. It's something lower than 50%. But my point is just that by looking at this chart, you can kind of see what's going on at different savings levels, even if I have not actually mapped out all the different percentiles here, because I wanted to focus on income and time, and savings rate would have been a third dimension, and that's really hard to visualize, so I didn't. All right, so in this first block, let's look at that. And let's expand this so that you can see all of it. Okay. If you earn $20,000 a year and you are able to live on only $677 a month, which for sure is difficult, but it's about $20 a day. And if you have housing already taken care of because you're living with someone else, then it's possible, but not fun, to live on this. And so I wouldn't recommend making $20,000 and saving $677 a month. Instead, I would say put this $677 a month towards education and try to get up to $40,000 or above. You really have an income problem down here. However, in theory, if you were to make $20,000 for a very long time, you would eventually get to the 1.2 million mark after 40 years of working and saving. So let's say you start at 22. No, you don't have to go to college if you're making $20,000 a year. You'd start at 18. You would end at 58. That's your 40 years. And then you would be in the top 10% if you were able to kind of survive all those 40 years only spending $677 a month, which for sure is super challenging and not recommended. And of course, as the income goes up, our $1.2 million achievement happens faster. So if you make $40,000, you can cut 10 years off that working timeline, and it only takes 30 years. $60,000, you can cut another 5 years off, and you're done at 25 years. And then, you go in increments of, like, say, 2.5 years. I think something that's interesting to note here is that the difference between $20,000 and $40,000, right, in terms of when you achieve 1.2 million is 10 years. But the difference between 120 and 140 is not even 2.5 years. They're very close. Why is this? Because there's a difference of $20,000 in both cases. Well, the reason why this is because the math, okay, here, for the people making very little money, most of the accumulated $1.2 million is investment returns. But for the people who make lots of money, they don't have nearly the same amount of time for compounding interest to take effect. So most of their returns are from their own contributions, not from compounding investment returns. So they see a smaller difference. Yeah, so that's why kind of the benefits of earning more money in terms of accumulating this sum they diminish as you earn more money. I think another just broad thing to note is that it looks like kind of making $40,000, $60,000 and above. That's the sweet spot for accumulating this amount of money within a reasonable working life. Say 25 or 30 years. Below 60 or 40, when you hit, especially at $20,000, when it's going to take you 40 years to reach a goal, you got to really question whether your health is going to last, whether this plan is going to work out. And so, so we know that to enter the top 10% at some time in your life, it's a good idea to make above, I don't know, $40,000. And you're going to have to be very frugal compared to everyone you know, because you're saving half your income. And very few people do that. Even though, after you've done it, it's a lot easier than you'd think. It's not impossible. But it is weird. You just get used to being weird. All right. The second thing I want to discuss is the more common scenario, frankly, the more realistic scenario, which is that you couple up, right? You are a household with two working people, and so both of your incomes count. And the first thing that we notice is that for the $20,000 scenario, you automatically get bumped up to 30 years from 40 years. So by getting married, if your income's only $20,000, not only do you have more efficiencies, and so this $677 goes further, but also you hit that magic mark after only 30 years instead of 40. So in a very real way, kind of getting married saved you 10 years of working. Once again, there's a 10-year gap between the achievement of the people earning $20,000 and the couple that earns $40,000 each. The $40,000 each couple achieves $1.2 million after only 20 years. The $20,000 couple, 30 years. So there's a big gap here. And there's a smaller gap, though, between kind of if we're looking from $40,000 up through $60,000, $80,000, whereas there was a spacing of 2 here. Now we have, and certainly part of this is just the rounding or whatever. But the point is, as a couple, you get done faster. Whereas the first people in the first scenario finished after 17.5 years. When you couple up, the first people are finishing after only 10 years. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, dual income, you finish faster. If you couple up, again, we can see that there's a big penalty for making less than $40,000, even if you're a couple. But if you make $40,000 above, and you're really frugal, and of course, being that frugal becomes easier as you make more money, then you can finish this whole thing in 20 years of effort. If you look at the average age of households that are worth $1.2 million, and the average age of millionaires in general, I think it's around 53, 55. It's in the 50s. And what that indicates to me is that most of the millionaires, and this is true by other data, they are getting to be millionaires by earning and saving and accumulating that money, not by having it dropped on them by their parents. And it takes a while to get there. But it is very possible to get there, according to the math. You just have to choose to be kind of weird. And I gotta say, even being weird, if you're living as a couple where each person's making, say, $60,000, but you're saving half the income, you're still living a very nice life by global standards. So that's it. It's very possible to do this. It takes some planning and effort. And the reason why I wanted to do this math and show this math first is because I want to see, as I read the article, how much the article is paying attention to people who are working hard and earning and saving versus anything else. Because this doesn't happen automatically by virtue of that you're born into a certain place. You have to plan this. You have to actually save the money. You have to have this goal in the first place. And if you do, then you can make a pretty wide variety of incomes and get there. And if you don't, you can make all these higher incomes and be nowhere close. Okay, that's it for this kind of initial analysis of how do you get into the top 10% in terms of household net worth. And I'm going to read the rest of that article. Hope you enjoyed this overview. Hope it gives you a little bit of motivation to kind of sock away some money so that you can get into this category. And have a fabulous day.